Good evening, my name is Silvia Guaman. I am a student of the University of the Armed Forces ESPE Distance Education Unit. I am going to talk about gender equity. We live in a world in which education shows extensive gender inequalities. For example, according to UNESCO, some girls don't complete the primary education because of two reasons. The quality of school is poor and girls don't have the same opportunity that boys have. Parity, equality, and equity. Gender parity refers to the same proportion of girls and boys enter and complete schooling. Parity must be complete with the quality or facilities. Numbers of textbooks will prepare teachers and numbers of girls graduating. Equality and equity. These words are associated, but they have different meanings. This means treating people the same or people having equal access to resources and opportunities. Equality. It is effect of treating each people without difference. For example, in the Ecuadorian government subsidies on gas to cook. It is available to all people. Gender equality is the aspiration of many international conventions and national constitutions to respect the human rights. Equity is when the people get access to the same opportunity to have and enjoy full and healthy life. Gender equity should be the aspiration of everybody in the world. Educational equality and equity. Educational equity is based on the premise that an individual's level of education is correctly directly to future quality of life that students. That is why it is so important. Educational equality and education equity. Making sure all students have equal access to resources. This is their goal, because all students should have the resources necessary for a high quality education and leaving the playing field. Educational equity, making sure that the students from low income, indigenous, Afro-Ecuadorian, from the rural area or from marginalized neighborhood context have access to exceptional, well-prepared and appropriate teacher, up-to-date materials and access to technology. Gender equality and gender equity in education. Education deals with the formation of habits of human beings, so gender equity in education means that boys and girls have the same opportunities. Gender equality in education means that members of both sexes should legally enjoy the same rights, resources, opportunities, and protections. In terms of education, boys and girls, men and women should have access to a high-quality education. Equality in the learning process is when girls and boys receive the same treatment and attention and have equal opportunities to take advantage of the process of learning. Gender equity. Men and women should be treated alike, treated according to their gender needs. In education, gender is not an obstacle to achieving education potential. Cause of gender discrimination in education. Gender discrimination in education is the unfair treatment of girls and denial of opportunities and violation of rights. For example, in Ecuador, in many countries, women are not considered worthy of education. And difference between men and women, boys and girls are related to issues such as political, social, economic and cultural. Political factors, socioeconomic factors, and sociocultural factors. Gender equality and gender equity promote peace. Is important improving the women's situation in terms of access to education, political representation, and economic participation will improve peace in the society. Poverty is one factor preventing children and especially girls from getting access to education. Society think that the men are more important than women in some types of study or for such careers involving high level of decision making and authority. Stakeholders to get the gender equity. Stakeholders responsible of ensuring gender equality and equity in education are government, parents, school, teachers, and students. All of us are responsible for monitoring because it's important improve to change stereotypes and ensure discriminatory practice are not tolerated. The process of gender equity construction. One of the ways to contribute is to develop a curriculum that has as a purpose to provide opportunity to boys and girls. For example, study perspectives on the construction of gender within different historical, cultural, and socioeconomic contexts, to develop skill, behavior, attitude, and understanding to construct equal and respectful relationships. Additional resources. Teachers are fundamental pillars so that there isn't discrimination in educational institutions. Teachers can encourage both girls and boys to actively integrate through the practice of art and sports. There are schools that are promoting pedagogy active and teaching context through movement. It's important to stop discussion about if women can or can't have it all, because the next generation of equal opportunity is here. Learn to be, learn to know, learn to do, and learn to live together is fundamental for the students know. And now I am going to talk about biological development and health. Biological development includes stages that start when a baby is still in the womb. Different essential prenatal stage takes place when the baby's body is forming. The infant stage is also a time of crucial growth and development. Children go through different periods of development as they grow. The prenatal stage of development. Prenatal development is a period of remarkable change that helps set the strategies for future psychological development. It occurs in three main stages: germinal stage, embryonic period, and fetal period. The brain develops during the prenatal period, but it will continue to go through more change during the early years of childhood. Brain development before birth. This process interacts to support the rest of series of events that delineate brain development. There are two processes that contribute to the brain development: the molecular events, gene expressions, and the impact of the environment. Growth and development stage in infants and children. Infants is in the first stage of development for children and covers the child during prenatal care and up to 1 year old. When the end of the first year, children usually are able to crawl, sit down, bite ball, and copy simple sounds and actions. Development for motor, language, social, sensory, and thinking skills. Child development covers the following skills: cognition, social interaction and emotional regulation, speech and language, physical skills, and sensory awareness. And these abilities are important for the development of the children. The biology of child development and learning. These insights together help understand how the formative experience of children takes place in their families, communities, healthcare settings, childcare, preschool centers, and schools, and help educators to understand the complexity and importance of their role. Broad insights about the role of the development brain and other biological systems in early childhood development. The first is rapidity of brain development during early childhood. Another important is when early psychological and social adversities begin. Even during fetal development can have important short and long-term effect of the brain's development and the way the brain and body handle stress. Immune and endocrine system could be affected by stress. The biology of adolescent development. Adolescence is the period of transition between childhood and adulthood. It is the name for the period from 10 to 20 years old. And changes that take place during this period are physical, intellectual, personality, and social development. Sexual maturation or puberty begin at different ages depending on genetic and environmental factors. Nutrition, general health, and living conditions have affected the sexual maturity times. It's important that of the brain development, it's necessary to remember that the frontal lobe of the adolescent, which is responsible for judgment, impulse, control, and planning, are still maturing. How health affects a child and an adolescent's school performance. There are some factors to take into consideration for having good health. There are some issues that can help us maximize our health. For example, balance and nutrition diets as natural as possible, regular exercise, screening for disease, coping strategies, and learning how to manage stress. The relationship between school performance and various health concerns includes the following issues. For example, poor sleep. Children who have problems with sleep are more likely to have problems with attention and learning. Exercise. Physical activity helps children develop social skills. Importance of breakfast. Some students do not consume enough food and it can affect a child's ability to learn. This is more problems of the health in the children. When they have any problems or any disease, they can't develop their abilities. Additional resource: germinal period. This conception is also the beginning of the germinal period of prenatal development. Embryonic period. This stage lasts from implantation until about 8 weeks from the time of conception. And fetal period, it begins at 3 months of gestation and ends when the baby is born. Domestic violence is other consequence that affects children and adolescents in further studies. Thank you.